Hello everyone and welcome to SEW-EURODRIVE's How-To series. We're going to be discussing how to maintain and take care of your product. So let's get into it. In this episode, we're going to be talking about gearbox seals. Not just how they work and what they're for, but also how to replace one when it fails. Before we get into the actual steps and talking about the seals, let's cover some safety pointers. First and foremost, it's always vital that you de-energize any equipment and power down your motor, follow all lockout tagout procedures before you perform any work. In addition, it's important that you have your PPE in place. And this means that you keep yourself and others safe around you. Now, let's get into the discussion on seals. So let's get into what a seal does. This particular gearbox I have in front of me has an output seal that you can see here where my finger is pointing, and this seal is designed to do two things. First, it's designed to keep the oil inside the gearbox. The second thing that it's designed to do is to keep any type of contamination from getting into the gearbox. So it keeps the oil in, keeps the contamination and dirt out. This seal that I have in my hand is one of our most common seals that we use on all of our gearboxes. And this seal has a special design where you have a dust lip on the outside that keeps the dust out, and then on the inside you have a seal with a spring that keeps this lip firmly adhered to the shaft, but it still allows the shaft to rotate freely. This design keeps the oil in so that you don't have any leaks. But over time, you can have leaks develop because things wear out, especially something that's made of rubber like this seal. So we're going to get into why you need to replace it based on what you see going on, how to do it properly so that we can get you back up and running. Now we're going to talk about why you would need to replace a seal, and also when you are replacing the seal, how to avoid damaging any of the components. One of the main causes of an oil leak with a gearbox is where the seal meets the shaft. And this is typically because of the fact that the seal has gotten older, it's gotten more brittle, and that's just what happens with rubber products. The big thing to remember is if you see oil coming out between the shaft and the seal, or the seal and the housing, you know you have a problem and that seal needs to be replaced. So when you're removing the seal, you want to place your tool as far away as possible from the shaft. And I like to use this outer divot that you see there in the design of the seal. That makes sure that I'm not going to get anywhere near the shaft because we do not want to damage the shaft. Now I'm going to take my tool and I've got a dead blow hammer and I'm going to set my seal remover tool there and I'm going to give it a few strikes. This is going to puncture the surface of the seal. Now as I'm doing that, it's important to remember you have something underneath there that's a little fragile, and that's called a bearing. And so it's important that once you puncture the seal, you don't keep pounding the tool because you could damage your bearing. Now I've punctured the seal, I'm just going to pry up and take that seal out. And just like that, I've got the seal out of the way, and we're going to do a little bit of inspection now. The important thing to remember is, why did the seal leak? I mentioned that earlier, but I want to get into something you couldn't tell until you get the seal that was there out of the way. And that is, the shaft may have a burr on it. So I like to take my bare finger and rub it around the surface to see if you feel anything that might be rough, a scratch, something that would cause that seal to get cut and leak. I do the same thing with the bore of the housing to make sure that there's no burrs there or anything else that could cause an issue with the seal there. Once I've established that there's no problem there, it's time to do a little bit of cleaning. When you're cleaning out the bore, what I recommend is using a lint-free rag and some form of degreaser. You're going to just wipe gently in there to make sure you get rid of any grease, and you do the same thing with the shaft. At this point, we're ready to install a new seal. So now that we have a clean bore and we have a shaft that's clean and undamaged, it's time for us to install the new seal. I have one of the new seals here. This is the single design that we have. And before we put the seal in, I too like to make sure that it looks fine and that the spring is still there. And then we're going to add a thin layer of grease onto the lip of the seal. To do this, I just have a little foam applicator and I have just a little bit of grease on here. It does not take much. One of the things you can do to damage a seal is actually to put too much grease on it, believe it or not. So You just in a circular pattern, rub the applicator around, and once you have a nice shiny coat around the entire seal, you're ready to install. When you install a seal, it's important that you remember you're sliding it over the shaft without popping that spring out of the back. So we put it in there like at an angle, and you rotate it around gently, and you can see when that lip has went over the shaft, so you're ready to take a hammer and lightly tap it into place. You can do a lot of damage with this hammer with a seal if you just start hitting it wildly, and that's why it's important that you do gentle taps in a circle and you stay towards the outer edge of the seal so that you do not dent the seal. Now I'm going to feel it a little bit and see, there's a little bit of a high spot. It's always good to check. What you're looking for is an even install. Now that I have that evenly installed, that seal is ready to do its job. So now we've successfully installed a seal into this gearbox. I want to talk about SEW-EURODRIVE's proprietary seal system that we also offer in addition to the basic seal systems. This comes in the form of a two-part assembly, and this assembly is going to go together and it's going to allow you to have 3 lips of protection. 2 to prevent oil from getting out of the gearbox, and then again 1 lip to prevent dust and contamination from getting into the gearbox. It goes together as far as going into the gearbox the same as a single seal, but I'm going to show you how you would assemble this before you do that. And so you're going to take the 2 components, you're going to place them together, and then I'm just going to set it on the table, and all it takes is a little bit of pressure from your hands to make sure that it's seated pretty good. And then we're going to finish that off with a few light taps from a hammer. You'll notice as I was tapping, I was staying on the outer edge of the seal in order to prevent any damage to that inner seal. Now, like I showed in the other scene, I'm going to put some grease onto this seal and it's ready for install, just like we did with the single seal. So if I was going to install this seal like I just installed the other single seal, I would put a little bit of grease on here and I would lightly tap it into place. And then you have that added layer of protection. Now the unit that we demonstrated on today uses a hollow shaft. SEW-EURODRIVE has other types of shafts with their gear motors. This includes solid shafts. Solid shafts have a keyway on them that can be sharp, and this could damage the seal. So it's just important you make sure you keep that seal away from that shaft surface while you're installing it. So now that you've got the seal installed, let's talk about a few reminders. First, you have this unit de-energized, so you need to re-energize it, and you need to make sure that you take your lockout tagout device off. In addition, one of the things that's going to show you whether you made the install proper or not was if it leaks when you start it up. So I recommend upon starting up your unit, observe the seal surface, see what's going on there. If there's a leak, that means you did something wrong. If it doesn't leak, then you're ready to run. If you're interested in learning more about SEW-EURODRIVE's components, products, or solutions, please go to SEW-EURODRIVE.com. Together, we drive the world.